There's sort of a running joke. The difference between an adventure and an expedition or an
Mhm.
exploration is an adventure is an exploration gone bad. And for me personally, at this point, as I said, I do enjoy sharing experiences with people for the first time and opening their eyes. But I do think that in any exploration, there's a nobility of purpose, that it's more than just pounding my chest and saying, hey, I'm on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. It might be bioprospecting for extremophiles on there to fill in some sort of knowledge gap. Or I remember another Kilimanjaro climb many years ago. We put the first automated weather station on Kilimanjaro. To me, it's that whole element of the greater good.
That is Richard Wiese. He is a world-renowned explorer, Emmy Award-winning TV host, and the newly elected 46th president of the legendary Explorers Club, a position he has now held a record 7 times, dating back to 2002, when he became the club's youngest president. He's led expeditions around the globe to all 7 continents, from skiing to the North Pole to summiting Mount Kilimanjaro 18 times to taking part in the largest medical expedition to Mount Everest. Richard founded the Explorers Club 50, celebrating unsung heroes changing the world, and he launched the club's first diversity, equity, and inclusion program. This weekend, September 12th to 14th, he'll help bring GLEX, the Global Explorers Summit, to RCGS headquarters in Ottawa, its first time ever on Canadian soil. I am thrilled to have Richard Wiese as our guest on this episode of Explore, a Canadian Geographic podcast. Welcome to all you explorers out there, armchair and in motion. I'm your host, David McGuffin. Before we get to Richard, let me make my pitch for GLEX happening this weekend at 50 Sussex Drive. I will definitely be there because the list of guest speakers is long and impressive. Here are just a few. British physicist and leading science broadcaster, Professor Brian Cox, described as the next David Attenborough. Louise Leakey, Kenyan paleontologist, continuing the legacy of her famous family in groundbreaking human origins research. Valerie Courtois, who's been on this podcast, a leader in Indigenous-led conservation and active in leading efforts to protect Canada's boreal forest. Dr. Sarah Seeger, Canadian MIT astronomer and director of NASA's Morningstar mission to Venus. And David Mearns, who's also been on this podcast, a world-leading shipwreck hunter. The events run from Friday to Sunday, with the main lectures happening on Saturday. Tickets are available at explorers.org. Richard and I will get into the event a bit more in our conversation, and he has also seen and done a ton of fascinating things in his life, so let's get to him. Richard Wiese, welcome to the Explore podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. I feel like I'm on Canadian soil already.
We'll make you an honorary Canadian by the end of this. I usually start off these podcasts by asking where your spark for adventure came from, but I have to say, reading your bio, there's a very specific moment that seems to stand out, in that you were like a month old and your dad became the first person to fly solo across the Pacific Ocean, which is no small feat. But the detail I love about that the most is that he had no idea.
Not only did he have no idea, when he found out, he was really trying to hide it from his employer, Pan American.
Explain that?
Because at that time, they didn't want their pilots showboating or doing anything. Pan Am was a very buttoned-up airline, so he did it under an assumed name. He was just trying to earn a little extra money, and he flew a pipe. I forget the actual airplane he flew, but he started in Texas, then had to go to San Francisco and flew all the way to the King Ranch in Australia. It's an interesting contrast, too, because I feel that there's a bit of look at me with explorers, and it's kind of hard to break that mirror of self-reflection.
Yeah.
And my father, I grew up with it, and I always knew my father did it, but it was never a big deal or even something that he talked about all that much unless we specifically asked him. So I kind of admire that kind of explorer.
Yeah.
It's old school.
And you're right, because a lot of what explorers are after are those firsts, right? I want to be the first too. And for him to just do it by mistake is just delicious.
My dad was a good guy. I have such fond memories of standing on our front lawn, and he started with the airlines doing celestial navigation, something that you don't hear very much about it. And we'd always talk about the sky, and, you know, weather was a big thing because he was a pilot. And There were little things that I knew growing up that I know it's so long, I don't even remember how long. I always knew a ring around the moon meant that it was going to rain within 24 hours or snow, and how weather systems came from the West. And so that was a language, even end of life for my father. I think our conversations always started about the weather.
Beyond the Weather Channel kind of stuff, I guess. This is
It was just a way. I have two sons, and we talk a lot about sports, but I think that people talk to people close to them in a certain language that you're familiar with. And so my father and I, to talk about life, we'd start on weather, and somebody may talk about football or baseball with a parent. But I think that it's always nice that you have this wonderful, it's almost intimate. You're talking about the weather, but really you're talking about everything else.
My dad was the same way. He was very weather obsessed. And there's things about where we lived. We were on a lake, and if the wind was blowing in the bay, like the moon you're talking about, it was going to rain within 24 hours. And it's just those little, there's something nice about cracking that code as well, you know? And I'm sure that served you deeply throughout your
there's
career.
other things too. Like if there was a hurricane offshore, we'd always go to the South Shore of Long Island where I grew up and go to the ocean to either go swimming in the big waves or just see it. I remember, I don't live in New York City anymore, but every once in a while, there's a bridge that goes over the East River to Queens, and I'd get on my bike and it'd be snowing and I have goggles on and I'd have a big backpack. I was going to Costco, and for that just moment of snow hitting me in the face, I felt I was transported someplace else. A lot of people, when they hear about bad weather, are like, oh, I better stay inside. There's an element of me that really likes seeing full-blown weather.
Exactly. Something you can lean into, right? Yeah, no, I totally hear you. Your dad, obviously, beyond flying, he got you into adventure. And when you were 11, there was a trip to Kilimanjaro in East Africa, and I was lucky enough to work as a correspondent in Nairobi for several years. So Kili was always on the horizon, quite literally. I can't imagine what it would have been like when, as an 11-year-old back then, I imagine it was a much more wild adventure, actually, than it is today.
It most certainly was. And it's so funny how many things we did wrong on it. Like we wore cotton shirts and stuff that got wet and cold. And I even remember at that time you would approach it from the Kenya side. And I remember meeting the first president of Kenya, Kenyatta.
Oh, wow.
And in 1971, which was the year I climbed it, Mount Kilimanjaro was not a national park. And it had really these ratty old huts on it from World War II era. And I met an old man at that point on the mountain that was 100 years old. And he was actually on the first climb of Kilimanjaro with the Germans in 1890 something. He was 100 years old. And I'd read later on that he died at 126. And then
that's amazing,
because the memory was so foggy to some degree, I went again in my 20s. And then a friend said, oh, wow, I'd like to go. And I went again. And so I've been 18 times over a 55-year period or a 54-year period. And, I really enjoy summiting that with people because it's in every man's Everest.
Yeah.
And I can't even tell you how many times I've hugged somebody or somebody's crying or somebody's overcome something. And it is really a great feeling to share that with people.
I've never done it, so I'm envious for sure.
I recommend it.
I will do it. So you've got such a resume of exploration. And part of what I love to do here is just help inspire our next generation of explorers as well. I mean, I just like to tick through, like, what defines a good expedition or a great expedition for you? And if you can give an example.
There's sort of a running joke, the difference between an adventure and an expedition or an exploration is an adventure is an exploration gone bad. And for me personally at this point, as I said, I do enjoy sharing experiences with people for the first time and opening their eyes. But I do think that in any exploration, there's a nobility of purpose, that it's more than just pounding my chest and saying, hey, I'm on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. It might be bioprospecting for extremophiles on there to fill in some sort of knowledge gap. Or I remember another Kilimanjaro climb many years ago, we put the first automated weather station on Kilimanjaro. To me, it's that whole element of the greater good. And I think it doesn't have to be in a far off place. I think that people will often apologize to me and say, oh, I've never been to Everest or the moon or any of those places Explorer Club members have been. But there's such discovery in your own backyard, literally. And I know that when my kids were little, we'd go down to the saltwater marshes or the Long Island Sound, and you go out on a tidal flat. And I think these tidal flats, especially the ones you have up in the provinces of Canada, the eastern provinces.
Oh, Bay of Fundy. Yeah.
It's a magic period where things are exposed for an hour or so, and there are no rules other than, respect for nature. And so I see kids out there digging, making little crab forts or houses, or looking at snails, or finding a dead fish, or looking at a horseshoe crab. And I think it's such a wonderful moment of discovery. And I also think that there are so many things that we see on such a regular basis that when told something new about it, you'll never look at it the same way. And I'll give you an example. I call it the full moon illusion. Everybody has seen a full moon come over the horizon that just looks ginormous, right? You're like, wow, this thing's huge. And often you'll take a picture and it doesn't quite look as ginormous as it did in your memory. And there's actually, the optical illusion is that our minds perceive things on the horizon as closer than they do when it's above us. So that same full moon, if you put your thumbnail out there or took a photo of it and did it later when it was higher in the sky, you find it's basically the same size. Huh. And so that's something so intuitive that you see all the time and you go, I just know it's huge. I'm looking at it. My eyes are not deceiving me, but in some sense they are.
So you're looking for magic, it sounds like.
I do believe in magic. I think that we always kid that the Explorers Club headquarters is Harry Potter's Hogwarts for adults. And I remember the first time I visited it, I listened to somebody talk about Amazonian spear tips and somebody walking in space. And so the magic that's happening really is happening. It's not the hocus pocus or magic formulas. It's just people coming back from extraordinary experiences and sharing it with other people.
There's a couple of expeditions you did that sort of stuck out to me. One, you skied to the North Pole. When was that, and what was that route?
The North Pole, as you probably know, is frozen water, right? Unless you go down, I think it's 8,000 or 9,000 feet. And so I was on a expedition where they dropped us off, that you fly in, you go to Svalbard, Norway, and they fly you in on an airplane. And I only skied from, I believe, 2 degrees south of the North Pole. But the interesting thing about skiing to the North Pole, a couple things stick out, is that the ice is always moving. So you may head in a direction and find you're further than when you started because the ice had actually been moving. There's still polar bears up there that are tracking you, which is interesting. But I think the coldest I've ever been is there as well, because when you cross country, you perspire, and the temperatures were always about minus 25-ish. And so the second you stop, you start shivering unbelievably. I always knew I was just a satellite phone away from being rescued if anything ever happened. Yeah. But it was interesting. I learned a lot about staying warm on that trip. I really did.
Yeah. And you're saying like the satellite phone too. Any of us who do anything like this nowadays are generally like 24 hours away from rescue. And you're the head of an organization where people were months away, if ever, from rescue. And who are some of the explorers that you sort of look to for inspiration? Maybe Explorers Club members or not.
So the greatest living explorer right now is Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah.
Just an amazing guy, and talk about the expedition of all time. He was an amazing guy. I knew Sir Edmund Hillary, and I always admired him because of his humility. And it was interesting. I remember him speaking at the Explorers Club annual dinner in, I think it was 2004. He was fairly old at that point. And when he was growing up in New Zealand, he said he was a very thin and awkward looking kid, and he was moving to a new school, and they put him in a gym class for kids with special needs because his ribs were sticking out. He was so skinny. And he always, in his mind, even later on, after receiving so many awards and accolades, never really thought he was up to snuff. He always thought that a bit of luck played into that. So it's always amazing what you remember years later. Dr. Sylvia Earle is an amazing woman. It's just at her 90th birthday party.
Hmm.
And I certainly, I hope, I don't think I have her energy right now. It's amazing that woman is still out there doing things.
So tell me about her.
Well, Dr. Sylvia Earle is an oceanographer, and they call her her deepness. And she's probably the leading figure in oceanography at the moment. She was a big National Geographic explorer. There's so many people that you wouldn't know their name. And I think one of the things that I've noticed as I've traveled around the world is that you meet incredible people that often you'll say, I met this incredible person. And that's where it ends. And during COVID, we started a new program called the Explorers Club 50.
Right.
The motto is 50 people who are changing the world that the world needs to know about. And really, that was us celebrating people around the world who do incredible things that people don't know about. And it's really been an amazing eye-opener for the Explorers Club. I think it's made us more representative of the fabric of the global exploration community. I think that it's really given us a direction in which we want to move forward.
Give us a couple of names that might be on this list that we don't know about.
Okay, I'll give you some of my favorite ones. So generally, most of them are fairly young, but there was a woman in her mid-80s, and she has an organization called Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage. And she and other seniors, women, they have to be over 65, go in all these ponds and lakes on Cape Cod, and they collect garbage. But she has had such a cult following of other women in their 60s, 70s, and maybe 80s who want to work with her. And so that's an example of someone who's very inspiring. There's a guy who straps thousands of seedlings and seeds on his body and parachutes into the Amazon to plant trees. He calls himself the Germinator.
Yeah.
We have women from Sri Lanka who are oceanographers. There was this one guy in India in particular who had planted over a 20-year period, literally hundreds of thousands of mangrove saplings to protect his island from the effects of global change and rising waters. And when we tried to give him the award, he hid because someone told him that the American government was looking for him and that he didn't want any part of it. And so we sent a friend of mine who's from India, flew there, convinced him that no one was out to get him, that they just wanted to celebrate him. We seem to have a lot of people lately in South America. There's this one guy, David Good. He was born in the Yanomami tribe in Venezuela, and his father was an anthropologist, married a tribal woman, and he moved to the U.S. when he was about 5 years old. His mother went back because she just couldn't handle
culture shock,
modern things. Yeah. And so he works with the Yanomami now on their tribal rights, but he's also doing research on their gut biome because they don't get a lot of the diseases that you and I might get, and they're trying to understand gut biome. I could go on and on. It's just, there are amazing people out there and amazing people that inspire you just by hearing their story.
Huh. That's very grassroots, it sounds, and they were very worthy, too.
It is, but they've been de facto some of our best speakers at some of the events we're doing. For example, coming up on September 12th to the 14th is we have the Global Exploration Summit, which we're going to have in Ottawa, Canada.
Yeah, at RCGS headquarters.
Most of our speakers are EC50 honorees.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, and some interesting folks, too. You've got a whole list of great speakers coming there. I think Louise Leakey and Brian Cox.
Brian Cox.
Yeah.
Now, do you know anything about Brian Cox?
I've not met him, but I'm an impressive guy. Yeah.
So there's a good story behind that too. So I met Brian Cox in 2000 actually, and I had been hired in England to host a television show called Earth and Space, and every day was devoted to a different aspect of science. And on Space Day, we happened to have Dr. Brian Cox as a remote guest. And at that time, you didn't have Zoom or any of these other things. You had those little weird round podcast kind of things. And so I was interviewing him on string theory, which I'm not that versant in.
Yeah.
And I mentioned something about Stephen Hawking's, and he said, Stephen doesn't know what he's talking about. This guy's great. We have to get him in the studio. It turned out that Brian, who's from Manchester, England, but he'd also been in a rock and roll band that had a #1 hit in England called D Ream. And it was Tony Blair's theme song was Things Can Only Get Better. And Brian was the keyboardist, and he looked like the Beatles.
Yeah.
And he ended up becoming my roommate in London. I introduced him to his wife.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of history between Brian and I, and he's become sort of the Neil deGrasse Tyson, or maybe the heir apparent of David Attenborough.
This is the beauty of the Explorers Club too, is you are pulling all these amazing people together in one place, right? What's
Not one place, Ottawa, Canada.
so why? I think this is the first time it's been to Canada, and what was the
Yes, it
thinking
is.
behind that?
To be completely frank, we collectively did not feel that our Canadian family were getting the proper recognition or love they deserve from their neighbors to the south. And that the history of exploration, Canada's played such a central role. But you know what? On a wider thought on this, we talked earlier about some of my adventures as a kid. That idea of curiosity or the exploration bug isn't a uniquely American experience. And I know that people in Canada feel the same and have the same ambitions. And it was so easy working with the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. John Geiger is the CEO. He's also a member of the Explorers Club. When we decided to put this together, it really felt like you were working with family, that there wasn't that normal anxiety when two organizations get together. There was no drawing a line in the sand. They couldn't have been more open and warm and welcoming to us. I always kid that Canada is like that neighbor you have that when you lend them your lawnmower, not only do they bring it back with gas in it, but they've done an oil change and they give you a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I think that's a good stereotype, but we just felt that Canada really deserved the recognition for being an inclusive community and a great place to do science. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it. I really, as I was kidding, there's a fashion term every year that they say, oh, blue is the new black, or something, the new black means it's in fashion. And I said, Canada is the new black. It's the place to be.
There's a lot of great history between the two countries, obviously, too. And I think a lot of love still there. So it's great to
I
see.
feel it. And,
Yeah.
and I don't know why I feel compelled every time I meet a Canadian to apologize or say, I really do like you guys. So
You spent a fair bit of time exploring up here, even.
I have. I think I've been to more places than most Canadians. I've been in the Torngat Mountains in Labrador.
Labrador, yeah.
Which is really an amazing place. I have a whole story getting stuck up there.
Yeah, tell me
I've
that.
been to
Now tell us about
up
getting
on
stuck in the
the-
Torngat, because I think that's a remote and fascinating place.
Yes, it is. It's the only place that polar bears, black bears share the same habitat, and there's still unscaled mountains there. It's pretty amazing. I've filmed in Arviat, which is on the Hudson Bay polar bears,
Yeah.
which I did by foot. I've been to Calgary. I've been to a lot of places in Alberta, BC. I've been to Haida Gwaii,
Beautiful.
where they
Yeah.
have those mortuary poles there. So I've been quite a bit of Canada. So
Was there a
big fan?
was there an expedition with Prince Albert of Monaco in the Yukon? Is that?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was in Yukon. Sure.
Yeah. What was that?
So that was when was that? That was like in 2018, just before COVID.
Yeah.
And his grandfather had done some overland trip that he didn't quite complete. Prince Albert wanted to finish the last 5 or 6 kilometers of it. I have to admit, traveling with Prince Albert, you're not exactly roughing it.
Is that glamping?
And,
Yeah.
and I love Air Canada, though I do think they're a little overpriced for the most part. And so for me to get back to New York from the Yukon, it was about 5 flights.
Wow.
And when we were leaving, he said, oh, you're going back to New York. He goes, do you want a lift? I can drop you off in Montreal. So we pull up to the private plane and I get on the royal plane with Prince Albert. And it was really funny because he wanted to show me his Explorers Club membership card
Cool.
and he dropped it. And then he got on his hands and knees. And I said, "You may rise." And he said, "I'm only a prince, but you are a president."
It's good when royalty has a sense of humor.
It does. He had never heard that joke. When I was a kid, people used to call up tobacco stores and
Yeah.
ask if they had Prince Albert in a can.
I never heard that.
You never heard that joke?
Oh, no, I've heard
So
that for sure. No, I think I did that.
Yeah, that's right. So I asked him if he ever heard of that joke, and he said no.
Ah, there you go.
So that's why I think that there's this whole nobility of what you think the hierarchy of organizations or even an expedition, but it's amazing how many silly or sophomoric things people talk about on expeditions.
It's about keeping your sanity, really, isn't it, a lot of the time?
Life's too short. And Ed Hillary, once I was at a gathering that had a few very famous Apollo astronauts and stuff. And he always said that enjoy it while you can, because you don't know how long it lasts. And he never took himself too seriously, that even though he was Sir Edmund Hillary, he was still a pretty humble guy who was very rooted in the reality of most people.
You're running the Explorers Club and have done this multiple times now. And what's your advice to people who want to get into the exploration game or whatever that is right now? It's obviously changed a lot since you started.
It has and it hasn't. I think that the best advice that I ever heard was from Dr. Sylvia Earle, who I mentioned earlier, oceanographer, because people always come up to her and say, "Oh, Dr. Earle, I want to do what you do." And she said, if you hang around the action long enough, you become part of the action. And so the whole idea is that you want to be an oceanographer, do the job that someone isn't willing to do, like washing boats or volunteering to do this or that. And I found in my own life, the whole idea of volunteering has always paid dividends that I never really thought. You hopefully volunteer for things for the right reasons, but it's such a great way to get tied into a community. And so I think that for young would-be explorers, have that positive attitude and be that person who's willing to do a lot of different things that people don't find desirable. I've learned over the years that community does play a big role in all of this, and that, become part of a community and know that whenever we do these functions at the Explorers Club, whether it's an annual dinner or this Global Exploration Summit, that people want time to chat with each other about their different work. And we joke that at the Explorers Club bar, that probably more expeditions were hatched there, people just chatting about this or that, and suddenly they're off and running and say, "Hey, let's do it."
It's about saying yes, isn't it, too, to a lot of stuff. And I think also your point is just get out there too, right? Like just get out, get away from the screen that we're both in front of right now and get out there.
I'm not, even though I have 3 teenagers and I definitely wish they'd have less screen time or phone time, I do find that the internet and AI and Google and all those things have probably made me smarter, in that when I'm out in the field or even walking and I think of something or see something, I can immediately look it up and find out about it. So I think it has been, for me personally, it's been a tool that has allowed me to discover more, or sometimes it takes you down a little bit of a path that you hadn't originally thought of because you found something interesting.
I guess the challenge is, though, too, especially in this like Instagram age, is that places become overrun by people who want that shot or whatever. And you must see that too, where you go and with your TV show.
Yeah, it's always a tricky thing. I think it comes down to what they call humble bragging. There's an element of me that really admires people from the previous generation that wasn't posting everything on social media. But then again, there's more of a democratization of travel. It's not just the BBC or PBS or the New York Times determining who can tell the story of exploration. Anybody can be a filmmaker now. These iPhones are amazing instruments out in the field.
Now people shooting movies literally on them now, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm Born to Explore, which has been going for a dozen or more years now, right? How long is that?
So it's currently in reruns. During COVID, it was a little bit of a death nail to it.
Yeah.
But we filmed 208 episodes.
Fantastic.
And we were nominated for think 14 or 15 daytime Emmys, won a few.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. It really was. And I owned the production, and it was literally one of those cases. I remember I was working for another show on US ABC, and I was with my cameraman, and people like to complain about their bosses or their employers. And we were like, oh man, we could do this so much better if we did it. It would be blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing it ourselves. And we didn't have huge budgets, but we put a lot of heart and soul into it. And I think maybe the best thing we did is we took the testosterone out of it.
Yeah.
One of our executive producers was a woman, came from a fashion background, and she would see more of the cultural aspects of places. And we started realizing that every location is fantastic, but it's usually the most memorable thing in any journey are the people you meet along the way.
Absolutely key. The fact that it is now in reruns too, it's a bigger challenge now to produce that kind of documentary style travel or whatever it is these days. Where do you see that going?
I really feel like really tough. I feel like I was at the end of the golden age of making that kind of programming.
Yeah.
Currently in the US, I'm not sure about Canada, there isn't a lot of science or adventure or travel TV shows on. People like things like White Lotus or kind of dramas. And so I meet a lot of filmmakers, and it's a really tough existence now because you need sponsorship to make things made, and sponsors want to see certain numbers. And I think it's hard to say you're an influencer unless you have millions of people who are following you. And even then, like someone will say, oh, this influencer has 1 million people following them. And I would say, listen, on my show on any given Saturday, I had 2 million people watching it for a half an hour.
Yeah.
You know, that's just a different metrics. It's tough. I think you have to be a lot more creative, and you got to really be adaptable to how you're going to get sources of income for this.
Yeah. So my journalism background started at PBS at the McNeil Era News Hour, which tells you how long ago that was, but also NPR and CBC. And I've really come to the belief now that public broadcasting is more important than ever because it's really the last place that has this kind of budget to fund things that matter like this.
I still have a television show on public television called Weekends with Yankee, and it's about the New England region. I really like filming it because I live in New England and I get to see really cool places that I can do test pilot for my own family. Yeah, PBS is special, but in the United States, there have been huge budget cuts to PBS, so they're scrambling as well.
And just need more support than ever, really. So I'm just plugging that. Get out and support your public broadcaster.
Absolutely. People who work for public television truly are socially conscious people who want to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's end on a more hopeful note than the current state of public broadcasting. So what does bring you hope in all your travels and all your work and everywhere you've been around the world? What is it that, there's a lot of grim things going on the planet right now, but what brings you hope?
There are a lot of grim things, and there always have been, but I'm immensely optimistic about the future. I really think that there's so many things to discover. I think that science is the answer. And the reason why people die at 85 instead of 35 is because of science. And I think that if people trust in the process of science, they find that the world's a better place. And I've met so many people out there who are fighting the fight, who are just determined to make the world a better place, that I choose to surround myself with those kind of people. And I do think that optimism and hope and science is going to make the world a better place.
Beautiful. Before you go, because I meant to ask you this in the moment and I didn't, but what's your favorite Buzz Aldrin story?
Oh, boy. There is still a part of Buzz Aldrin that really resents he was not number one. And that's a whole thing, or even his father not fully accepting that.
That he wasn't the first guy on the moon.
Yeah, and because the protocol meant that he should have been. I don't know if you've ever looked, but if you look at all the pictures on the moon, there are none of Neil Armstrong other than a reflection in the visor of Buzz Aldrin. And so I asked him, why didn't you take any pictures of Neil Armstrong on the moon? And he said he had a shot list and he was just following what was on that list. And I was like, wow. I said, I would be upset. Imagine coming back from your trip from the Grand Canyon and you're looking through the photos and you're like, where am I? And I find that kind of a curious story. And then even I once asked him, when you look at the moon, what do you think? And he said, I know I should think of something philosophical, but he goes, nothing really. And I've always found that really amazing. These guys had such ice water in their veins that they so prevented themselves from having any emotional response to their accomplishment.
Yeah. Those guys were in a tin can, basically, too, which is always what blows me away. Oh, my God.
It was like if you've ever had an aluminum canoe, it was basically the same thing with the rivets and a canoe. And even while they were landing, because they were going to land on a boulder field, Armstrong did a manual maneuvers to get over that, but he had to extend the flight another 10 seconds. And their fuel was gauged to, if they had less than 60 seconds, that he was supposed to pull an eject cord. So Aldrin's just looking at that whole thing, and Armstrong is doing that maneuver over it. And if you think that your iPhone has quantum leaps more computing power than they had, these were really amazing guys. And even the whole NASA group, they really had the best and the brightest. And it shows what can be accomplished when you have people in a collective direction to try to solve a problem. I mean, it wasn't just the two astronauts there, or it was a support team of thousands of people working with them.
Fantastic. So give us your last pitch on the Global Explorer Summit in Ottawa.
I just think that the Davos of exploration will be in Ottawa, Canada on September 12th to 15th. I think you're going to see some of the best and the brightest, and I think you'll see a lot of joy and optimism for what the future will bring.
Yeah.
And I'm just so proud that we're doing it in Canada.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing you there. And thanks so much for coming on the Explore podcast.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
That was Richard Wiese, the president of the Explorers Club. If you are in or near the Ottawa area this weekend, you can meet Richard and an amazing collection of the world's greatest explorers at the Global Exploration Summit at RCGS headquarters, 50 Sussex Drive in Ottawa. I will be there too, and I really can't wait. Tickets are available at explorers.org. And listen, a special thanks to all of you for listening. Because of you, we're charting on Apple Podcasts in a dozen countries around the world, including a top 5 ranking in Canada's Places and Travel category, and number 2 in Finland in the same category. Kiitos Suomi. You've always been my second favorite hockey nation, Finland, and I love you even more now. And a reminder, if you enjoyed this episode or this podcast in general, send a link to friends, families, and colleagues. It's the best way to spread the word about these conversations. Be sure to follow us on social media at CanGeo and at David.McGuffin. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss amazing episodes that are coming up. That includes another in our canoe series with the great paddling explorer and author, Adam Schultz. Until next time, when we'll explore again, I'm David McGuffin.
I think right now we're enjoying very much looking back at the Earth, and it's just a fantastic experience, and I just can't wait to get back and start telling people
We left Simpson about June 10th with the Fur Brigade, consisting of a number of yacht boats, each manned by 10 voyageurs.
For us Inuit, it means that Inuit oral history is very strong.
And we flew low over every inch of the country that could be. We were hoping that he would fire at us.
I guess 160